The ink stains on my fingers never fully washed out anymore. After 8 hours of hand-lettering wedding invitations, they'd become a permanent fixture. Dark blue smudges that marked me as someone who still believed in the dying art of penmanship. My apartment in Brooklyn was barely 400 square feet, but the corner by the window was mine. A drafting table I'd found on Craigslist. My grandmother's collection of fountain pens and nibs, bottles of ink in every shade imaginable, and a lamp that cast the kind of warm light you needed to see the subtle variations in letterforms. It was almost midnight. I should have stopped hours ago, but the electric bill was due in 3 days, and I was exactly $147 short. The wedding invitations paid well, $8 per envelope, but they required perfection. One shaky line, one smudged letter, and I'd have to start over. I couldn't afford waste. My phone buzzed. A text from my landlord. Rent reminder. As if I could forget that I was already 5 days late and running on borrowed time. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. I set down my pen and flexed my cramping hand. The apartment was cold. I'd turned the heat down to save money, working in a hoodie and fingerless gloves that let me maintain the precision my work demanded. This wasn't how I'd imagined my life at 28. I'd graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design with honors, a degree in graphic design, and a specialization in typography. I was supposed to be working for some prestigious agency, designing book covers or brand identities. Instead, I was hand-lettering place cards for people who'd spend more on their bar service than I'd earn in 6 months. But calligraphy was the only thing that kept me afloat after everything fell apart. After my sister Isabella died 3 years ago. After the medical bills and funeral costs devoured my savings. After I realized that no amount of prestigious internships or portfolio pieces mattered when you were 25 and suddenly alone in the world. Isabella had been the successful one, the ambitious one. She'd worked in finance, made real money, had an apartment in Manhattan that actually had a bedroom separate from the living space. She was supposed to be the one who made it, who proved that kids from a struggling single mother in Queens could build something better. Then she got sick. Pancreatic cancer, fast and brutal. 6 months from diagnosis to funeral. I'd taken care of her those last months, watching her waste away in that expensive apartment that suddenly felt like a prison. She'd made me promise to keep creating, to not give up on art even when everything felt impossible. So here I was, creating, barely surviving, but creating. I picked up my pen again and returned to the invitation in front of me. The bride wanted a specific style. Delicate copperplate script with elaborate flourishes. It was the kind of writing that required absolute control, the kind Isabella had taught me when we were kids. She'd been obsessed with old letters, with the way people used to communicate through careful penmanship. She'd spent hours teaching me the traditional hands, the historical scripts, the way to hold a pen so the ink flowed just right. Some of my earliest memories were of Isabella's hand guiding mine, teaching me to form the elegant loops and precise angles. Before she got ambitious, before finance consumed her, before everything changed, she'd loved calligraphy as much as I did. I finished the invitation just after 1 a.m. and allowed myself the luxury of 5 hours of sleep before I had to be up for my other job, the one that actually paid on time. I worked 3 mornings a week at a stationery store in Manhattan, selling overpriced journals and fountain pens to people who'd used them twice before forgetting them in a drawer. It was steady money. Not much, but steady. And sometimes, very rarely, it led to private commissions. People who saw my hand-lettering samples displayed behind the counter and wanted something custom. That's how I'd survived the last 3 years. Patience, precision, and the desperate hustle of someone who had no safety net. The subway at 7:30 a.m. was its own special kind of hell. Packed bodies, stale air, the sensation of being processed through the city's digestive system. I'd learned to stand in a specific spot on the platform, to position myself for a quick exit at my stop, to keep my portfolio bag tucked against my body so it wouldn't get crushed. The shop opened at 9. I arrived at 8:45, unlocked the door, turned on the lights, arranged the display tables the way my manager Marcus insisted they be arranged. By 8:55, I had the register ready and was positioning my personal work samples in their designated spot. Marcus arrived at 9 too with coffee for both of us, a small kindness that made the minimum wage bearable. "Morning, Riley. You look exhausted. I probably look how I feel." He handed me the coffee. "Late commission night? Wedding invitations. 50 envelopes. Copperplate script. Due today." Marcus whistled low. "That's brutal." but also means you're getting recognized. Clients requesting your style specifically? Sometimes. The morning passed in the usual rhythm. Tourists buying souvenir journals. Business people replacing lost pens. The occasional stationery enthusiast who actually understood the difference between paperweights and fountain pen nibs. I helped them all with the kind of patient expertise that came from genuinely loving the products we sold. Around 11:30, the bell above the door chimed. 3 men entered, and everything in the shop seemed to shift. They wore suits that probably cost more than my annual income, moved with the kind of coordinated awareness that suggested security training, and carried themselves with an authority that made even Marcus straighten behind the counter. The man in the middle was different. Taller, broader through the shoulders, with black hair and dark eyes that assessed the entire shop in a single sweep. He was maybe mid-30s, with the kind of face that belonged in old Italian paintings. Strong features, olive skin, an intensity that made the air feel heavier. He walked past the display tables without looking at them, heading directly for the counter where my work samples were positioned. He stopped in front of them, leaned in close to examine the calligraphy. My stomach tightened. This was either very good or very bad, and I couldn't tell which. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, moving toward him with my customer service smile in place. His eyes shifted to me. Up close, they were even more intense, almost black. The kind of eyes that felt like they were reading everything you'd ever thought. "Who did this work?" His voice was low, controlled, with the faintest trace of an accent. "Italian, maybe. Just enough to soften the edges of certain words." I did. I gestured to the samples. "These are examples of different styles I specialize in. If you're looking for custom calligraphy, I can. Where did you learn?" The question was sharp, not rude, but urgent, demanding an answer rather than making conversation. "My sister taught me. I studied at RISD, but the foundations, the traditional hands, I learned those from her." Something flickered across his face. His jaw tightened. One of the men flanking him shifted position slightly, a subtle movement that suggested he was ready for something I couldn't identify. The man in the middle reached into his jacket, and for a brief, terrifying moment, I thought he was going for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a folded paper. He unfolded it on the counter, smoothing it carefully. It was a letter, old paper, the kind with visible texture. The ink had faded to a soft brown, but the writing was still clear. Elaborate italic script, each letter formed with the kind of precision that came from years of practice. I knew that hand. Recognition hit me like a physical blow. I'd seen this writing before, had studied it, had learned from it. My breathing felt suddenly difficult. This specific style, the way the capitals flowed, the particular slant of the descenders, the decorative flourishes that marked certain letter combinations. This was Isabella's writing. My sister's writing, but that was impossible. Isabella had been dead for 3 years, and this letter looked decades old. "You recognize it?" It wasn't a question. I looked up at him, trying to keep my face neutral, even though my heart was hammering. "It's italic hand. 16th century style. Beautiful craftsmanship." That's not what I asked. His voice had gone very quiet, which somehow made it more intimidating. "Do you recognize this specific hand? Who taught you to write this way?" I should have lied. Should have played ignorant, protected myself from whatever complication this man represented. But the letter was right there, and it looked so much like Isabella's work that I couldn't pretend otherwise. "My sister," I said quietly. "This looks like my sister's writing." His hand moved so fast I didn't see it coming. One moment I was standing behind the counter. The next, his fingers were wrapped around my wrist, not painfully, but firm enough that I couldn't pull away. The 2 men flanking him had positioned themselves blocking the door. Marcus had gone very still behind the register. "Your sister's name." "Now, Isabella Chen." He released my wrist, but his eyes never left my face. "When did she die?" 3 years ago." "How?" I swallowed hard. "Cancer. Pancreatic. 6 months. Diagnosis to funeral." The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. He picked up the letter, stared at it for a long moment, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Your sister didn't teach you this style." "My sister did." He placed the letter back on the counter with careful reverence. "And she's been dead for 7 years." The world felt unsteady. "My sister taught me calligraphy." I've been writing in her style since I was a child. Not possible. This is my sister's hand. Specific flourishes, particular letter formations that she developed. No one else writes exactly like this. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, then turned the screen toward me. A woman, maybe late 20s, laughing at the camera. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, olive skin. She was beautiful, holding a fountain pen, surrounded by letters and calligraphy samples. This is Juliana. She died 7 years ago. Car accident in Rome. And that, he pointed at the samples on the counter, at the letter he'd brought. That is her writing. I stared at the photo, at the woman who looked nothing like Isabella but whose handwriting was identical to what my sister had taught me. This doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. His jaw tightened. Unless your sister learned from Juliana, unless they knew each other. Isabella never mentioned knowing anyone named Juliana. I was trying to piece together a timeline that refused to fit. 7 years ago, I would have been 21. Isabella would have been 24. She was working at that finance firm, traveling a lot. New York, London, sometimes Italy. Italy. The word hung between us. When did Isabella start teaching you the specific techniques? When you were a child, or later? I thought back, trying to remember. The basics, she taught me young, but the more advanced stuff, the specific styles, that came later. When I was in high school and college, when she was already working, she'd bring home old letters, samples of historical writing, teach me to replicate them. He pulled something else from his jacket. A photograph, protected in a clear sleeve. 2 women sitting at a cafe table, both laughing, papers spread between them. One was Juliana from the phone photo, the other was Isabella. My vision blurred. That's my sister. Your sister knew Juliana. They worked together on something, studied together. I don't know the details yet, but this photograph is dated March, 8 years ago. 1 year before Juliana died. I couldn't breathe properly. Isabella had never mentioned this. Never said anything about learning. Calligraphy from someone else. About having a mentor. About Juliana. Why would she keep that secret? I need you to come with me. The man's voice pulled me back to the present. I need to show you something. Ask you questions. You have answers you don't know you have. I'm working. I gestured to Marcus. To the shop. I can't just leave. Marcus, who'd been frozen behind the register, finally found his voice. Riley, maybe you should go. I'll cover your shift. I'll tell corporate you had a family emergency. Marcus, I'll be fine. Go. The look in his eyes said this wasn't really a choice. The man pulled out a business card, handed it to me. Heavy stock, simple design. Marco DeLuca. Just a name and a phone number, no title, no company. You're not asking, I said, looking at the card. You're telling me I'm coming with you. I'm asking. He met my eyes directly. But I'm desperate enough that I hope you say yes. Your sister's writing. My sister's writing. They're connected. I've been searching for that connection for 7 years, and you're the first real lead I've found. What if I say no? Then I leave. But I come back tomorrow. And the next day, and the one after that. Because this matters to me more than you can understand, and I don't give up. The intensity in his voice made me believe him. I looked at the letter on the counter, at Isabella's writing that was actually Juliana's writing, at the photograph of my sister with a woman she'd never mentioned, at Marcus, nodding encouragingly behind the register, at the 2 men by the door who were clearly waiting for Marco's signal. This was insane. I should absolutely say no, should call the police, should get as far from this situation as possible. But Isabella had kept secrets. Important secrets about something that mattered enough to learn an entire system of writing from someone else and then teach it to me without explanation. I needed to know why. How long will this take? I asked. A few hours. I'll have you home by evening, and I'll pay you for your time. He named a figure that made my mouth go dry. That would cover rent for 2 months and most of the electric bill. This is a bad idea, I said. Probably, but you're going to say yes anyway. How do you know? Because you recognized your sister's writing in that letter, and you need to understand how it got there as much as I do. He was right. God help me, he was right. I grabbed my portfolio bag from under the counter. If you're a serial killer, Marcus knows I left with you. Noted. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but close. For the record, I'm not a serial killer. That's exactly what a serial killer would say. Fair point. He held the door open. The car is outside. I followed him out of the shop, past the 2 security men who fell into step behind us, toward a black SUV idling at the curb. I was either about to get answers about Isabella's secret life, or I was making the worst decision of my existence. The truth was probably somewhere in between. The SUV's interior was leather and luxury, and a level of comfort I'd forgotten existed. Marco sat beside me in the back seat. The 2 security men took the front. We pulled into Manhattan traffic, heading downtown. "Tell me about your sister," Marco said quietly. "What was she like?" "Ambitious. Smart. She worked in finance, made good money, took care of me after our mom died." I stared out the window, watching the city slide past. She loved old things. Letters, vintage books, historical documents. Said there was something pure about communication that required thought and effort. Juliana was the same. His voice softened. She was an art historian, specialized in medieval manuscripts and Renaissance correspondence. She believed handwriting revealed character, that you could understand someone's soul through how they formed letters. Is that why this matters so much? Finding someone else who writes like her? Partly. But mostly because Juliana died in what was ruled an accident, and I never believed it. He looked at me directly. "I think someone killed my sister. And I think your sister knew why." The words settled between us like stones dropping into deep water. Isabella had died of cancer. Natural causes, horrible but natural. There was no conspiracy, no murder, just cells that multiplied wrong and a body that couldn't fight back. But she'd kept secrets, big secrets, had learned calligraphy from a woman she'd never mentioned, had been photographed with someone I'd never heard of, had taught me a specific handwriting style without explaining where it came from. "What do you think they were working on?" I asked. "Some kind of document? Research?" "I don't know yet." Marco's jaw tightened. But Juliana was investigating something in the weeks before she died. She'd become secretive, worried. She told me she'd found something important, something dangerous. Then she was dead, and all her research disappeared. "And you think Isabella had copies? Or knew what Juliana found?" "I think they were working together. I think your sister continued the work after Juliana died. And I think..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I think that's why your sister taught you this specific handwriting. So the knowledge wouldn't die with her. That's a hell of an assumption. I know. But look at the evidence. Juliana dies. A year later, your sister starts teaching you advanced calligraphy techniques in Juliana's exact style. 3 years ago, your sister dies, and now you're carrying on a tradition you don't understand, writing in a hand that connects you to my sister without knowing it." The SUV turned onto a street in the financial district, pulled up in front of a building that was all glass and steel and money. We went inside, through a lobby that had actual art on the walls, into an elevator that required a key card to access the upper floors. Marco's office was on the 42nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, furniture that looked vintage and expensive, walls covered with framed letters and documents. Everything was in Italian or Latin, elaborate calligraphy protected behind museum-quality glass. He led me to a large table where more documents were spread out, all protected in clear sleeves. "This is everything I have from Juliana's last year." He gestured to the papers. Letters she was researching, correspondence between historical figures, documents related to something she called the Ferrara collection. "What's the Ferrara collection?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out for 7 years." Marco picked up one of the documents, held it carefully. It's referenced in several of Juliana's notes, but she never explained what it was. Some kind of archive, possibly documents related to the Medici family or Renaissance banking houses. Why would that be dangerous? Because if the documents are authentic and reveal certain historical truths about money movements, property claims, or family lineages, they could impact current wealth and power structures. He met my eyes. There are families in Italy, old families, who've built empires on specific historical narratives. If those narratives are lies, someone would kill to keep that quiet. Exactly. And Juliana was getting close to something. Close enough that someone made sure she couldn't continue. I moved along the table, looking at the documents. The calligraphy was beautiful, precise, centuries old. These are incredible. Where did she find them? Various sources, estate sales, private collections, libraries. She had a network of dealers and collectors who'd alert her when interesting pieces became available. He pulled out a folder, opened it to show photocopies of letters. These are what she was studying right before she died. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The handwriting made my breath catch. Not because it was Juliana's style, but because it was Isabella's. Or rather, the style Isabella had taught me that was actually Juliana's. Which meant these historical documents were written in a hand that I'd been practicing for years without knowing I was connecting myself to a centuries-old mystery. You see it, Marco said quietly. The similarity. I see it. My voice came out rough. Isabella must have been helping Juliana research these, learning the hand so she could transcribe or translate. Maybe, or maybe authenticate. He pulled out another document, this one clearly newer. This is a letter Juliana received a month before she died. It's in the same historical hand, but the paper is modern. Someone was forging documents in the medieval style, and Juliana discovered it, which would ruin someone's credibility, their collection, possibly their fortune if they'd been selling fakes as authentic pieces. That's one theory. Marco's expression darkened. But I think it's more than that. I think the forgeries themselves contained information, hidden messages or codes. I think Juliana and your sister were decoding something. The room felt too warm suddenly. Isabella had cancer. She got sick. She died. There's no conspiracy there. I saw the medical records, the death certificate. I'm not suggesting your sister was murdered. His voice was gentle. I'm suggesting she inherited dangerous knowledge. And maybe, just maybe, she encoded that knowledge in the only way she knew how. By teaching you. That's insane. Is it? You're one of maybe 5 people in the world who can write in Juliana's exact hand. You learned it from Isabella, who learned it from Juliana. That's not coincidence. That's intention. That's Isabella making sure the skill survived even if the secret stayed hidden. I turned away from him, staring out the windows at Manhattan stretched below. Everything he was saying sounded paranoid, conspiratorial, impossible. But it also explained things that never made sense. Why Isabella had been so insistent I learned calligraphy. Why she'd made me practice specific letterforms over and over. Why she'd given me all her materials and samples before she died, making me promise to keep creating. What do you want from me? I asked. Help me understand what Juliana found. Help me read these documents with someone who knows the hand as well as she did. And if there are codes or hidden messages, help me decode them. His reflection appeared beside mine in the window. I've been stuck for 7 years. You're the first real progress I've made. And if I say no? If I walk out of here and pretend this conversation never happened? Then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what Isabella was protecting you from. What knowledge she thought was important enough to encode in calligraphy lessons. Whether she died with secrets you deserve to know. He was right again. I hated that he was right. I turned to face him. I'll help you. But I have conditions. Name them. This stays professional. You pay me for my time like any other consulting work. I need to cover rent and bills. This isn't charity. Agreed. Second, you tell me everything you know about Isabella. Every interaction, every conversation Juliana mentioned. No secrets. Done. Third, I met his eyes directly. If this gets dangerous, if someone besides us seems interested in this research, you tell me immediately. And I reserve the right to walk away. Fair. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal? I looked at his hand, at the office full of historical documents, at the mystery that connected my dead sister to his, at the calligraphy samples I'd been creating for years without understanding their significance. This was absolutely a terrible decision. But I'd already made it the moment I saw Isabella's writing in that letter. Deal, I said, and shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, careful, the handshake of someone who understood the weight of agreements. Welcome to the search, Riley Chen. He released my hand. Let's find out what our sisters were trying to tell us. The next 3 days followed a pattern that felt surreal. I'd wake up in my cramped Brooklyn apartment, take the subway to Marco's office in the Procus, financial district, and spend hours examining centuries-old documents, while he watched me work with an intensity that made my skin prickle. He paid me at the end of each day. Cash. More money than I'd seen in months, handed over like it was nothing. He never asked for receipts, never made me sign anything, just counted out bills and placed them in an envelope with my name written across the front in neat block letters. The calligraphy work was fascinating, Juliana had been studying correspondence between Florentine banking families in the 1500s, letters that detailed money movements, property transfers, and political alliances. The handwriting was exquisite, each letter formed with the kind of precision that came from years of training. And it was exactly the style Isabella had taught me. By the third day, I'd translated and transcribed 47 letters. Marco had them organized chronologically, tracking a specific transaction involving the Medici Bank and a property dispute in Rome. The details were dense, full of Renaissance-era financial terminology that required research to decode properly. "You're faster than Juliana was," Marco said on Thursday afternoon. He stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching me work. She'd spend hours on a single letter, checking every detail. I learned from someone who learned from her. I didn't look up from the document I was examining. The technique is in my muscle memory now. Plus, I'm used to working under deadline pressure. Wedding season waits for no one. He turned from the window. "You're making jokes. 3 days ago, I thought you might be a serial killer." The corner of my mouth lifted. "Now I've upgraded you to possibly dangerous, but probably not immediately threatening." High praise. His voice carried dry humor. Should I be flattered? You should be grateful I'm still showing up. I set down my pen, flexed my cramping hand. This is the longest job I've had since Isabella died. Most people want 50 envelopes and think that's a big commission. Marco moved to the table, studying the documents I'd transcribed. "You're good at this. Not just the calligraphy, but the translation, the historical context. You understand what you're reading." Isabella was obsessed with Renaissance history. She'd bore me with stories about the Medici, about Michelangelo's banking connections, about how art and money were inseparable in 15th century Florence. I traced one of the letterforms absently. I absorbed it by proximity. Did she ever mention why she was so interested? Or was it just academic curiosity? I thought back, trying to remember conversations from years ago. She said that understanding historical money movements helped her understand modern finance, that the patterns repeated, just with different names and technologies. Marco's jaw tightened. That's what Juliana believed, too. That there were financial dynasties that had maintained power for centuries, that the wealth accumulation started in the Renaissance and never stopped, just evolved. Sounds like conspiracy theory territory. Maybe. He picked up one of the transcribed letters. Or maybe it's pattern recognition. These families, the Medici, the Strozzi, the Pazzi, they didn't just disappear when the Renaissance ended. They adapted, changed names sometimes, married into other dynasties, moved money through different channels, but the power structure remained. And you think someone's still protecting those structures? Protecting them enough to kill anyone who gets too close to the truth? I know how that sounds. His voice was quiet, paranoid, unreasonable. But Juliana died in a car accident where the brakes failed. The mechanic who inspected her car died 3 months later. Heart attack at 35, no prior health conditions. And the dealer who sold her the documents she was studying? Suicide, they said. Jumped from his apartment balcony. The coffee I'd been drinking suddenly tasted bitter. That's 3 deaths. 3 people connected to her research. All dead within 8 months of each other. The police investigated. They found nothing suspicious. Each death had a plausible explanation. He met my eyes. But I stopped believing in that many coincidences. The office felt colder. I'd been thinking of this as an academic exercise, a well-paying translation job with an interesting mystery attached. But Marco was talking about murder, multiple murders, and Isabella had been connected to this research. "My sister died of cancer," I said firmly. "Natural causes. There's no question about that. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I am suggesting she might have known she was dying and made choices based on that knowledge, teaching you the specific handwriting, giving you her research materials, making you promise to continue creating. Maybe she was passing on something she thought was too important to lose. Or maybe she just loved calligraphy and wanted me to have a skill I could use." I pushed back from the table. "You're reading intention into coincidence." "Am I?" He pulled a folder from a drawer in his desk, opened it to reveal photographs. Juliana kept a journal. I found it after she died, hidden in her apartment. Most of it was about her research, but there were entries about Isabella, about their friendship. He slid the folder across to me. I opened it, saw photocopies of journal pages in Italian. Juliana's handwriting, slightly different from her formal calligraphy, more rushed and personal. Marco had highlighted specific passages and translated them into English on attached notes. Met with Isabella again today. She's brilliant, understands the implications immediately. We agreed to work separately for safety. If anything happens to one of us, the other continues. Another entry, dated 4 months before Juliana died. Isabella suggested we each train someone else, pass on the knowledge indirectly. She has a younger sister studying art. Perfect candidate. I'm thinking of approaching my cousin, but he's too involved in the family business. Might put him at risk. A final entry from 2 weeks before the accident. Isabella says we're close. One more document and we can prove the connection. But I'm scared. Someone's been following me. Isabella noticed it too. We're being more careful now. But if something happens, she knows what to do. My hands were shaking. I set the folder down. Tried to breathe normally. This doesn't prove anything. Just that they were friends. That they worked on research together. It proves Isabella knew Juliana thought she was in danger. Marco's voice was gentle but firm. And it proves they made plans for what would happen if that danger became real. Juliana died 2 weeks after that last entry. Isabella continued the work and taught you the skills you'd need to understand it. I stood, needing distance from the documents and the implications. This is too much. I came here to translate some letters, not to get involved in whatever conspiracy theory you've constructed around your sister's death. I know. He didn't move, didn't try to stop me. And if you want to walk away right now, I'll understand. I'll pay you for the work you've done, and we'll part professionally. But Isabella wanted you to know this. She encoded the knowledge in everything she taught you, and somewhere in her research materials, in the samples she left you, there might be answers we both need. The room felt too small. I moved to the windows, stared out at Manhattan. 42 stories up, the city looked manageable. Organized. Nothing like the chaos I felt inside. What exactly are you asking me to do? I said quietly. Help me find what Juliana and Isabella discovered. What they thought was worth dying to protect. Marco joined me at the window, maintaining careful distance. I have Juliana's documents, but they're incomplete. If Isabella continued the work, she might have found the missing pieces. And you think she left those pieces hidden in calligraphy samples, coded in the writing she taught me? That sounds insane. It probably is insane, but it's the only lead I have left. He paused. Will you at least look? Go through Isabella's materials, see if anything stands out as unusual or coded? The smart answer was no. The safe answer was to take my payment and forget this entire conversation. But Isabella's voice echoed in my memory, making me promise to keep creating, to never give up the art she'd taught me. At the time, I thought she was just being sentimental, a dying woman wanting her legacy to continue. What if it was more than that? What if she was literally passing on her legacy, the research she couldn't complete? I'll look, I said finally, but I'm not promising to find anything. And if this gets dangerous, if anyone besides us starts showing interest, I'm out. Deal? Deal. The relief in his voice was palpable. Over the next week, the rhythm changed. I still came to Marco's office, but now I brought boxes from my apartment. Everything Isabella had left me, calligraphy samples, letters she'd written, instructional materials she'd created, notebooks full of practice letterforms. Marco had cleared a separate workspace for me, a smaller room adjacent to his office, with good light and a door that locked. He respected my need for privacy, never hovering, but always available when I had questions. The work was meticulous. I examined every document Isabella had created, looking for anomalies, hidden messages, unusual letter substitutions, anything that might indicate coded information. On the 9th day, I found something. Isabella had created a sample alphabet sheet, demonstrating various historical hands. It looked like standard instructional material, the kind you'd use to teach someone letterforms. But when I compared it to the documents Juliana had been studying, I noticed that certain letters had slight variations, intentional, variations that formed a cipher key. Marco, I called through the open door. I think I found something. He was at my side within seconds. What is it? This alphabet sheet. I laid it next to one of Juliana's research documents. Look at the lowercase e formations. In standard italic hand, the exit stroke angles up at 45 degrees. But in Isabella's samples, some of them angle down. It's subtle, but consistent. You think it's a substitution cipher? The downward strokes represent different letters? Maybe. Or maybe they mark which words in a larger document are important. Like a highlighting system hidden in the calligraphy itself. His eyes lit up with the kind of intensity I'd come to recognize as Marco fully engaged. Can you map it? Create a key that shows which letter variations mean what. I can try. But I'll need to cross-reference it with all of Juliana's documents, see if the pattern holds consistently. That could take days. Take whatever time you need. His hand briefly touched my shoulder, a gesture of gratitude that felt more intimate than it should have. This is the first real progress in 7 years. The contact sent unexpected warmth through me. I'd been trying not to notice how attractive Marco was, how his intensity felt magnetic when directed at the work we shared. But in that moment, with his hand on my shoulder and genuine hope in his eyes, the professional distance I'd been maintaining felt thinner. He seemed to realize the same thing. He pulled his hand back, cleared his throat. I'll order dinner. This might be a long night. You like Thai food? I could live on Thai food. Get extra spring rolls. He smiled, genuine and warm, and something in my chest tightened. This was dangerous territory. Not just the research and potential conspiracy, but the way I was starting to feel about Marco De Luca. The way his presence made my small apartment feel emptier when I returned home. The way his voice on the phone asking about my day had become the best part of my evening. I was falling for someone I barely knew. Someone connected to mysteries and deaths and secrets. Someone who lived in a world of wealth and power so far removed from my struggling artist existence that we might as well be different species. But when he returned with Thai food an hour later, when we spread the containers across my workspace and worked side by side decoding Isabella's cipher, it felt right. Natural. Like something that had been waiting to happen since the moment he walked into that stationery shop. The cipher was complex. Isabella had created a multi-layer system where letter variations indicated which words mattered, and within those words, specific letter forms spelled out a hidden message. It took 3 days of intensive work to decode the first complete sentence. Ferrara documents prove Vitali family claims false. Property seized illegally 1593. Marco stared at the decoded message like I'd just handed him the keys to the universe. Vitali. That's my family name. The anglicized version is De Luca, but in Italy, we were Vitali. Your family's property claims are based on Renaissance-era transactions? Some of them. We have estates in Tuscany, property in Rome, holdings that trace back centuries. He ran a hand through his hair. But if the original acquisition was illegal, if the documents were forged, your entire family legacy could be built on lies. And if someone proved it, you'd lose everything, which gives your family a motive to suppress this research. His face went carefully neutral. I'm not involved in that side of things. My father managed the Italian properties, the historical claims. I run legitimate businesses in America, separate from the old family structures. But you're still a Vitali, still heir to whatever empire your father built. He met my eyes. Yes, and that's exactly why I need to know the truth. If my family wealth comes from illegal seizures, from forged documents and Renaissance-era crimes, I deserve to. No, I won't build my life on lies, even comfortable ones. The conviction in his voice made me believe him, but it also made the situation more complicated. If Marco's own family was behind Juliana's death, we weren't just investigating historical mysteries. We were walking directly into danger. That night, Marco insisted on driving me home. It's late, he said when I protested. And this neighborhood isn't safe at 1 a.m. Let me make sure you get home safely. The drive to Brooklyn was quiet. Marco's driver navigated Manhattan traffic while we sat in the back seat, the decoded message between us like a ticking bomb. When we pulled up to my building, Marco turned to me. I need to tell you something. About my family. About who I really am. I thought you ran legitimate businesses. I do, now. But my father. His voice tightened. My father was what you'd politely call a businessman. What the FBI called organized crime. The De Luca family, the American branch of the Vitalis. We made our money through less than legal means. You're telling me you're Mafia, former Mafia. I got out 5 years ago, started cleaning up the family businesses, transitioning everything to legitimate operations. Marco's jaw was tight. But that history follows you. People still see the name and make assumptions. Are those assumptions wrong? Sometimes, not always. He looked at me directly. I'm not a good man, Riley. I've done things, authorized things, That would horrify you. But I'm trying to be better. Trying to build something legitimate. Something Juliana would have been proud of. The honesty was unexpected. And terrifying. Because it meant everything I'd been helping with. Every document we'd decoded. Connected to actual organized crime. Not historical intrigue, but modern danger. I should get out of the car, I said quietly. Should walk away from this entire situation. Yes, you absolutely should. His voice was rough. But will you? I looked at him. At the man who'd spent 7 years searching for truth about his sister's death. Who was willing to expose his own family's crimes if it meant honoring her memory. Who paid me fairly, respected my boundaries, and made me feel seen in a way I hadn't experienced since Isabella died. The smart choice was obvious. The safe choice was clear. But Isabella had trusted Juliana enough to risk everything. Had encoded messages she wanted found. Had made me promise to continue creating, knowing it might lead me here. I'll keep working, I said. But you need to tell me everything, every danger, every complication, every reason this might get me killed. No more secrets. Agreed. His eyes held mine. And Riley? I'm going to protect you. Whatever happens, whoever comes looking, I won't let anything happen to you. The promise felt heavy. Binding. Like we'd just crossed a line neither of us could uncross. I should tell you that's not necessary. That I can take care of myself. I probably should. But I didn't. Instead, I got out of the car, walked into my building, and tried not to think about how much I wanted his protection. How safe I'd felt sitting next to him, decoding secrets that could destroy everything. The next morning, everything changed. I arrived at Marco's office to find him in the conference room with 3 other men. 2 I recognized as his usual security. The third was older, maybe late 50s, with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he'd seen too much and forgotten none of it. Riley, this is Matteo Santoro, my head of security. Marco's voice was tense. We had a situation last night. Someone broke into the building. They didn't take anything, but they accessed my office. Matteo's reviewing the security footage now. My stomach dropped. They were looking for the documents. Almost certainly. Marco's jaw was tight, which means someone knows what we're working on. Someone's paying attention. Matteo looked at me with sharp assessment. Miss Chen, I need to ask you some questions. Have you noticed anyone following you? Unusual cars near your apartment? Strange phone calls? No. I'd been focused on the work, on decoding Isabella's cipher. I hadn't thought about physical surveillance. Start thinking about it, Matteo said bluntly. If they hit Mr. DeLuca's office, they'll investigate his associates. That includes you. Whoever Isabella and Juliana were running from 7 years ago, they're still out there. Still protecting their secrets. The room felt airless. This had been abstract until now. Historical mystery, intellectual puzzle. But actual people had broken into Marco's office. Actual danger was circling closer. Marco, I need to show you something, Matteo said. He pulled up security footage on the conference room screen. This is from 3 nights ago. Your building's parking garage. The footage showed me leaving. Marco's driver holding the car door. But in the background, almost invisible, was another vehicle. Black sedan. Windows tinted. Positioned where it had clear view of Marco's building entrance. They've been watching for at least 3 days, Matteo continued. Maybe longer. We're checking older footage now. But the break-in last night suggests they're escalating. Moving from surveillance to direct action. Marco's hand clenched on the table. Riley's going into protective custody. Effective immediately. Excuse me? I stood. You don't get to make that decision for me. You're in danger because of research I asked you to help with. His voice was steel. I'm not letting you get hurt because I pulled you into this. I'm an adult capable of making my own choices. And I choose to continue working. Walking away now doesn't make me safer. If they know I'm involved, leaving just makes me a loose end with no protection. He stared at me, conflict clear on his face. You're asking me to put you at risk. I'm asking you to trust me to understand what I'm choosing. I met his eyes steadily. Isabella died without finishing this. Juliana died trying to expose the truth. I'm not walking away from their legacy because it's dangerous. I'm walking toward it because that's what they wanted. The silence stretched. Finally, Marco turned to Matteo. Can you keep her safe? If she stays? Matteo studied me with calculating eyes. She'll need to move. That Brooklyn apartment is indefensible. She'll stay somewhere secure, with 24-hour security. No solo trips, no unprotected movements. And she cooperates with every security protocol, without argument. He looked at me for confirmation. Those are the terms. Non-negotiable. Where would I stay? I asked. I have a property in Westchester, gated estate, full security system, dedicated protection team. Marco's voice was careful. You'd have your own suite, complete privacy, but you'd be under guard until this is resolved. How long? Until we decode the rest of Isabella's cipher and figure out who's protecting what secrets. Could be days, could be weeks. His eyes held mine. I know what I'm asking. I know it's your life I'm disrupting. You're asking me to be safe. To stay alive long enough to finish what Isabella started. I took a breath. Okay, I'll go to Westchester. But I need to stop by my apartment first, pack properly, grab my work materials. Matteo shook his head. Too risky. We'll send a team to collect your belongings. You make a list, they retrieve everything. You don't go back there until this is over. That's my home. I know. But it's also a known location where enemies can find you. Matteo's voice was firm but not unkind. One apartment isn't worth your life, Miss Chen. He was right. I hated that he was right, but he was. Okay. I'll make a list. Marco, can I speak with you privately? We stepped into his office, away from Matteo's sharp assessment. I closed the door. Are you sure about this? Moving me to your property? Won't that create complications? He moved closer, close enough that I could smell cedar and expensive coffee. The only complication is keeping you alive. Everything else we can figure out later. The we in that sentence felt significant, like we'd become a unit, partners in more than just research. Marco, I started, then stopped. I didn't know how to articulate what I was feeling, the fear mixing with trust, the danger making everything more intense. I know, he said quietly. I feel it too. This is moving fast, faster than either of us planned. But I need you safe. Not just because you're helping with the research, but because... He paused, choosing words carefully. Because the thought of something happening to you is unacceptable to me. On every level. My breath caught. This was the moment to establish boundaries. To keep things professional. But standing there, in his office, with danger circling closer and secrets pulling us together, professional distance felt impossible. Take me to Westchester, I said. Keep me safe. We'll finish Isabella's cipher. We'll find the truth, and then we'll figure out what this is. He smiled, small but genuine. That's a plan I can work with. 2 hours later, I was in the back of Marco's SUV, being driven out of Manhattan toward a property I'd only seen in photos Matteo had shown me for security briefing purposes. Gated estate, 6 bedrooms, staff quarters, security posts at every entrance. Marco sat beside me, reviewing documents on his tablet, but his awareness of me was palpable. Every time the car hit a bump, every time I shifted position, his attention flickered my way, protective, possessive, in a way that should have bothered me but somehow didn't. What was I doing? Moving into the home of a man I'd known for 2 weeks. A man with organized crime connections, with enemies dangerous enough to kill. A man whose sister had died investigating secrets that might destroy his family's legacy. But also a man who'd spent 7 years searching for truth, who paid fairly, protected fiercely, and looked at me like I mattered. Like I was more than just a translator hired for a job. The estate appeared through trees, all stone, and glass and money. Security gates opened smoothly. The driveway curved through landscaped gardens, before ending at a main house that looked more like a small hotel than a private residence. Welcome to the safest place in Westchester County, Marco said, with dry humor. Or at least the most heavily secured. Matteo has teams positioned at every access point. You couldn't leave if you wanted to. That's supposed to be comforting? Weirdly, yes. He met my eyes. You're safe here, Riley. That's what matters. A woman in her 50s met us at the entrance. Warm smile, efficient demeanor. Elena. The house manager, Marco said. She'll show you to your suite. Make sure you have everything you need. Elena, this is Riley Chen. She's a guest, not a prisoner. Treat her accordingly. Of course, Mr. DeLuca. Elena's eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. This way, Miss Chen. My suite was on the 2nd floor. Bedroom, sitting room, private bathroom that was bigger than my entire Brooklyn apartment. Windows overlooked the grounds. security cameras visible at strategic points. Elena showed me where everything was, explained meal times and house rules, then left me alone with a promise that my belongings would arrive within the hour. I sat on the bed, expensive linens, soft beneath me, and tried to process everything that had happened in 14 days. I'd met Marco, found a connection between our dead sisters, decoded a hidden message that implicated his family in Renaissance-era crimes. And now I was living in his Westchester estate under protective custody. My phone buzzed. A text from Marco, even though he was somewhere in the same house. "Dinner at 7 if you're comfortable. No pressure. Elena can bring a tray to your room if you'd prefer." I responded. "Dinner works. I should probably meet my jailer properly." His response came quickly. "Host, not jailer. Important distinction." Despite everything, I smiled. At 7, I found Marco in a dining room that managed to feel intimate despite being large enough to seat 20. He'd changed from his suit into dark jeans and a fitted black sweater. Less intimidating. More human. "How's the suite?" he asked as I sat down. "Comfortable. Much nicer than my apartment." I paused as Elena served food. "Thank you for this. For keeping me safe. You don't need to thank me. This is my responsibility. You got pulled into danger because I asked for your help." "No. I got pulled into danger because Isabella and Juliana started something that needed finishing." I met his eyes. "I chose to be here. Remember that." Dinner was surprisingly easy. We talked about everything except the research. Marco asked about my time at RISD, about what I'd wanted to do before life derailed those plans. I asked about his legitimate businesses, about how he'd transitioned away from his family's criminal empire. The more we talked, the more I realized how much we had in common. Both shaped by loss, both trying to honor sisters who died too young, both carrying guilt about surviving when someone we loved hadn't. After dinner, we moved to a library that looked like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling books, leather furniture, a fireplace burning low. Marco poured wine without asking if I wanted it, just handed me a glass and sat across from me. "Tell me about Isabella," he said. "Not the researcher, not the calligraphy teacher, just Isabella." I took a sip of wine, let the memories surface. She was fierce, protective. After our mom died, she basically raised me. Worked full-time, paid for my art supplies, showed up to every school event. She made sure I never felt abandoned, even though we'd lost everything. Juliana was similar. His voice softened. She practically raised me after our mother died. My father was, he paused, finding the right words, busy with his business interests. Juliana was the one who made sure I did homework, attended parent-teacher conferences, remembered I was a kid, not just a future crime lord. Is that what you were being trained for? To take over the family business? Yes. Marco stared into his wine. I was good at it too. Efficient, ruthless when necessary. I built the American operations into something formidable. And then Juliana died. And I realized I'd become exactly what she'd always feared I'd become. That's why you got out. Partly. Also because continuing meant never knowing if I'd killed the people responsible for her death. My own family, my father's associates, they all became suspects. I couldn't lead an organization when I suspected everyone in it, so you burned it all down and started over. More or less. I sold off the criminal assets, transitioned the legitimate holdings into my name, cut ties with anyone involved in the old operations. His jaw tightened. My father disowned me, said I'd betrayed the family legacy. We haven't spoken in 4 years. That must be hard, carrying that choice, some days. He looked at me directly. But Juliana would have approved. She'd wanted me to choose differently, to be more than what my father trained me to be. So I am, even if it means being alone in a family that now considers me a traitor. The vulnerability in his admission made my chest ache. You're not alone. You have people who work with you, who chose to transition alongside you. And now you have me, helping with the research. Is that what this is? Just research? His voice had gone quiet, intense. Because it feels like more than that to me. Like somewhere between decoding ciphers and dodging surveillance. Something shifted. My heart was hammering. It feels like more to me too. But Marco, this is complicated. The danger, your history, the fact that we met because our sisters died. This isn't exactly a foundation for anything healthy. Maybe not. But maybe that's what makes it real. We've both seen the worst possibilities. lived through loss that breaks most people. And we're choosing this anyway. Choosing what? I asked, even though I knew. Choosing each other. Whatever that looks like. However complicated it gets. He set his wine down, leaned forward. I'm not expecting anything, Riley. You're here because you're in danger and I can protect you. But I'd be lying if I said I hadn't thought about kissing you approximately 200 times since we met. The admission sent heat through me. I've thought about it too. More than I should have, considering you're technically my employer and also connected to organized crime. Former organized crime. Important distinction. Right. Former. I smiled despite the tension. That makes this so much less complicated. He stood, moved closer. His hand came up to cut my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. We can stop this. You can go back to your suite. We can maintain professional distance. Say the word, and I step away. I should say the word. Should be smart, careful, professional. But Isabella's voice echoed in my memory. Don't waste time on fear, Riley. Life's too short and too precious to deny yourself connection when you find it. I don't want you to step away, I whispered. He kissed me then, soft at first, tentative, giving me space to pull back if I wanted. But I didn't want space. I wanted his hands in my hair, his body pressed against mine, the taste of wine and want between us. The kiss deepened. Years of loneliness and grief and careful distance melted away. His hands were gentle but possessive, holding me like I was something precious he'd been searching for. My fingers found the soft cashmere of his sweater, pulled him closer. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against mine. This complicates everything. I know, but I don't care. I don't either. But Riley, I need you to understand something. His voice was serious. If we do this, if we become more than just colleagues working on research, I'm all in. I don't do casual. I protect what's mine with everything I have. Is that supposed to be a warning? A promise. His eyes held mine. You deserve to know what you're getting into. Who you're getting involved with. I'm possessive, controlling when I care about someone, and I have enemies who won't hesitate to use you against me if they discover you matter to me. You're really selling this. I smiled against his mouth. But here's the thing, Marco De Luca. I'm not fragile. I'm not some helpless person who needs saving. I survived losing everyone I loved, built a life from nothing, and learned to fight for every inch of space I occupy in this world. Your enemies don't scare me as much as the thought of walking away from whatever this is between us. He kissed me again, harder this time, less controlled. Then we're doing this. Yeah, we are. And we'll figure out the complications as we go. We spent the next hour in that library, kissing like teenagers, talking between stolen moments of connection, learning the taste and feel of each other. When we finally pulled apart, both flushed and wanting more but choosing to wait, Marco walked me to my suite. He kissed me once more at my door. Sleep well. Tomorrow we finish decoding Isabella's cipher. And then we figure out who wanted our sisters dead, and we make them pay. The promise in his voice was dark, dangerous, and absolutely sincere. I should have been frightened. Instead, I felt safe, protected, like I'd finally found someone who understood the cost of loss and the necessity of justice. I slept better that night than I had in years, protected not just by security systems and armed guards, but by the knowledge that Marco De Luca had claimed me as his to protect, and I'd chosen him right back, complications and all. The complete cipher decoded 3 days later. Isabella had been meticulous, layering meaning within meaning, ensuring that only someone trained in Juliana's exact technique could read the full message. Marco and I worked side by side in the estate's library, our relationship now both professional and intimate in ways that made every shared glance feel weighted. He'd kiss me during breaks, hold my hand while we reviewed documents, and at night we'd fall asleep together in his room, wrapped around each other like we were afraid to let go. But the decoded message changed everything. The Ferrara collection documents prove the Vitali family's Tuscan estates were seized illegally in 1593 through forged papal authorization. The true owners were the Ferrara family. Evidence exists in the Vatican secret archives, file designation FSC1593T. Juliana Vitali discovered this truth. She was murdered by family order to protect the legacy. Isabella Chen witnessed the planning. She has 3 months to live. This cipher is her testimony. I read it aloud, my voice shaking on the final words. Isabella knew she was dying, knew she had limited time, and she used that time to encode evidence of Juliana's murder. Marco's face had gone pale. Family order. That means my father, or his advisors. Someone in the Vitali organization killed Juliana to protect our property claims. And Isabella witnessed the planning. I looked at the cipher key, at my sister's careful handwriting. She must have been doing translation work for them. Heard something she shouldn't have. She knew they killed Juliana, and she knew they'd kill her too if they discovered what she'd learned. So she hid it in calligraphy lessons. Marco's voice was hollow. Made sure you'd be able to decode it eventually, but only after she was safely dead and you were trained enough to understand the implications. The library felt too small suddenly, too confining. My sister had lived her final months knowing she'd been exposed to murderers, knowing she was dying but still finding the courage to encode the truth, to make sure someone, eventually, would know what happened to Juliana. Marco stood abruptly, pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Matteo. We need to verify this, get into the Vatican archives, confirm the documents exist, and then we're going to the FBI. My family doesn't get to commit murder and maintain their empire on lies." "Wait." I grabbed his arm. "If you expose this, you lose everything. The estates, the properties, the entire family legacy. Your father will know you betrayed him." "Good." His eyes were hard, cold in a way I hadn't seen before. "Let him know. Let everyone know. Juliana deserved better than to die for discovering the truth, and Isabella deserved better than to spend her last months afraid, encoding secrets because she couldn't trust anyone to believe her. But Marco, the danger. If your family ordered Juliana's death, they won't hesitate to kill us for exposing them. They're already surveilling us, already broke into your office. Once we go public with this, we become immediate targets." "I know." He cupped my face in his hands. "That's why we're doing this smart. We make copies of everything, distribute them to multiple sources, ensure that our deaths would only make the evidence more credible, not bury it, and then we release everything simultaneously. Vatican documents, Isabella's cipher, all of it." His phone rang, Matteo's name on the screen. Marco answered. "Put it on speaker." "We have a problem," Matteo said without preamble. "Security breach. Someone disabled the east perimeter cameras. We have a blind spot approximately 4 minutes wide. Teams are converging now, but..." Gunfire cracked through the phone connection. Matteo swore. "They're in the grounds. At least 6 hostiles, professional-grade weapons. Get Riley to the safe room. Now." Marco grabbed my hand, pulled me toward a bookshelf that swung outward to reveal a reinforced door. Inside was a small room. Concrete walls, surveillance monitors showing the estate grounds. Armed men in tactical gear were moving through the gardens, coordinating their approach. "They're coming for the research," I said. "For the decoded cipher, or they're coming to eliminate the threat we represent." Marco was pulling weapons from a hidden compartment. Matteo's teams are good, but these attackers knew exactly where our blind spots were. "This is an inside job. Someone in your security team is working for your father. Someone who knew we'd decoded the cipher, knew what we'd found." His jaw tightened. "Which means we can't trust anyone." He handed me a handgun. "Do you know how to use this?" Isabella taught me. One of her paranoid phases before she died. She said women who knew dangerous secrets should know how to defend themselves. I checked the magazine, the safety. Looks like she was right. The monitors showed Matteo's teams engaging the attackers. Muzzle flashes, men falling, organized chaos. But the attackers were pushing forward, getting closer to the main house. "Marco, we need to leave. If they breach this room, we're trapped. There's a tunnel." He pointed to another concealed door. "Leads to the garage. We can get out, get to the city, go public with everything before they can stop us. But it means leaving Matteo and the security teams to hold them off. They're trained for this." I grabbed the research materials, Isabella's cipher, all the documents we'd need to prove our case. And they'd want us to survive. To make sure their sacrifice means something, we moved through the tunnel. Concrete walls pressing close, emergency lights casting everything in red. Behind us, gunfire continued, closer now. The attackers had breached the house. Marco's phone buzzed, a text from Matteo. "Go, don't stop, I'll buy you time." The garage held multiple vehicles. Marco chose an armored SUV, threw the documents in the back, got behind the wheel. I climbed in beside him, weapon in my lap, heart hammering. The garage door opened onto a service road that led away from the estate. We made it 50 yards before the road ahead exploded. The SUV swerved, Marco fighting for control. In the rearview mirror, 2 vehicles were pursuing us. Professional chase cars, designed for exactly this kind of operation. "Hold on," Marco said, and accelerated. The SUV had power, but the chase cars were faster. They pulled alongside, windows dropping, weapons appearing. Marco yanked the wheel, slammed into the nearest vehicle, forced it off the road. It rolled, tumbling into trees. The second car opened fire. Bullets sparked off armored panels, spiderwebbed the reinforced glass. I returned fire through my window, aiming for their tires. One shot connected. The car swerved, lost speed. We broke free onto a main road, heading toward the highway. Behind us, Manhattan's lights glowed like a promise of safety. If we could reach the city, reach public spaces and witnesses, they couldn't continue the attack without exposing themselves. Marco's phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. "Marco DeLuca. How disappointing you've become." The voice was older, accented, cold with fury. "Your father taught you better than this. Loyalty to family above all else." "Who is this?" Marco demanded. "Alessandro Vitale, your father's advisor. The man who's been protecting the family interests for 40 years, including eliminating threats like Juliana." A pause. "And now, apparently, like you. The FBI will have copies of everything we've found. Killing us accomplishes nothing. Perhaps, but it sends a message. Family betrayal has consequences." Another pause. "The girl dies first, so you can watch. So you understand what you've cost us." Marco's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Touch her and I'll burn the entire organization to the ground. Every business, every holding, every person who ever worked for you. I still have the contacts, the leverage. Push me and I'll make sure there's nothing left." Brave words from a man running for his life. But there was uncertainty in Alessandro's voice now. Marco DeLuca had been one of them once. They knew what he was capable of when threatened. "Give us the documents. Walk away. Live whatever soft life you've built in America. The girl can even survive if you cooperate. No deal. The truth comes out. All of it. You murdered Juliana because she discovered your lies. You terrified Isabella Chen into encoding her final testimony. And now you'll face consequences." He ended the call. We reached the city as dawn broke. Marco drove to the FBI field office in downtown Manhattan, parked directly in front. Inside, we found an agent Matteo had vetted months ago as part of Marco's ongoing cooperation agreement. Special Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Isabella, just cosmic irony. Agent Chen listened to our story, examined the documents, reviewed Isabella's decoded cipher. Her expression went from skeptical to shocked to grimly determined. "This is substantial evidence of historical fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. We'll need time to verify the Vatican documents, but if what you're saying is true, the Vitale family's entire American operation is built on illegally seized assets." "How long do we have?" I asked. "Before they come for us again?" "We're putting you in protective custody immediately. Witness protection protocols until trial." She looked at Marco. "Mr. DeLuca, you understand this means testifying against your own family. There's no walking that back. I understand. And I'm ready." His hand found mine under the table. "We both are." The trial took 8 months. 8 months of safe houses and security details and preparing testimony. 8 months of Marco and me building a life in the spaces between fear, learning to trust the future we were creating together. When the verdict came guilty on all counts for Alessandro Vitale and 3 other family advisors, we stood together in the courtroom and watched justice finally arrive for Juliana and Isabella. Afterward, on the courthouse steps, Marco pulled me close. "It's over. Really over. We're safe now. We're free." I corrected. "There's a difference. We rebuilt our lives carefully." Marco's legitimate businesses thrived without the shadow of criminal legacy. I opened a calligraphy studio in Manhattan, teaching the art Isabella had passed to me, honoring both sisters with every letter I formed. 6 months after the trial, Marco proposed, not with grand gestures or elaborate planning, but on an ordinary Tuesday while we were decoding yet another historical document for a museum client. "Marry me," he said, looking up from a 15th century letter. "Build this messy, complicated, beautiful life with me permanently." "Yes," I said without hesitation. Obviously, yes. We married in a small ceremony with Mateo as best man and Agent Chen as a witness. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. And on our wedding night, I finally finished the last piece of Isabella's cipher, a message meant just for me. Riley, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But you're not alone. You found the truth, found justice, and hopefully found someone worth trusting with everything I taught you. Live fully, love bravely, and keep creating. That's how we honor the dead, by refusing to let their secrets die with them. I love you, Isabella. I showed Marco through tears. He held me while I cried, while I grieved, while I celebrated. Because that's what we'd built, a partnership that could hold all of it. The danger and the safety, the past and the future, the loss and the love. Our complicated, beautiful, hard-won life together. Exactly what both our sisters would have wanted. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.